From the get-go, Jesus' life was far from smooth sailing. News of his birth upsets all of Jerusalem, including King Herod, who seeks to destroy the child. Then Jesus is whisked off to Egypt to spare his life, possibly before he's even old enough to talk. When we next hear of Jesus, he's being baptized in the River Jordan, and the Spirit immediately whisks him into the desert for his inaugural wilderness experience, where he's being prepared to follow God's call on his life. For several weeks now, we've been wandering with Jesus through countryside and town as he gathers a rather motley crew of disciples, calling them to the intense demands for those who will follow Jesus. This Jesus, whom we follow, turns things upside down, redefining who's in and who is out in the community of God, welcoming children, women, the poor, hated tax collectors, all those on the lower rungs of the societal ladder, healing and lifting up the ones whom society, especially the religious establishment, preferred not even to have around. Jesus disrupts the recognized power structures most everywhere he goes. Deep commitment, confrontation, controversy, and conflict seem pretty much the order of the day for Jesus. At this point, if Jesus' disciples could possibly think it is going to be any different from them, that they could possibly avoid risks and dangers, at least if they continue to follow Jesus, they are about to get a few more powerful lessons on the cost of following the Jesus way. By now, Jesus knows the risks of entering Jerusalem, that things are not likely going to go well for him, that the path ahead will be hard and painful, a difficult road to walk. Yet he doesn't waver. He has made a defining decision. His mind is made up. He is intent on following God's call in his life, whatever the cost may be. But first, Jesus' journey takes a turn towards celebration. Preparing to enter Jerusalem, Jesus does not take the status of king for himself. Instead, he chooses to ride into the city on a female donkey, accompanied by her young colt, rather than on a flashy war horse of royal pageantry and military might. But even riding in on this pack animal, considered a beast of burden used for carrying cargo, people respond to Jesus as if a great king were arriving in their midst. And this event throws Jerusalem into turmoil yet again. Not only are outsiders approaching the city in loud mob-like fashion, but they're celebrating Jesus, this Jesus whom their leaders are seeking to destroy, hailing him as heir of David, treating him as royalty, as one who rules with great power. The last time Jerusalem was in this kind of turmoil was at Jesus' birth. Now here comes Jesus entering Jerusalem, again challenging the powers that be, disrupting the status quo, disturbing life for a whole lot of people. Great crowds gather, laying out the red carpet, so to speak, for Jesus, spreading their coats, cutting branches and putting them in the roadway, perhaps waving palms as we have already done this morning, throngs of people leading the way, throngs of people following behind, shouting, "Hosanna," blessing Jesus as the one who comes in the name of the Most High, in the name of God, declaring Jesus the prophet, the one from Nazareth in Galilee, a person of significance and real religious importance. The celebratory entry of Jesus stirs those in Jerusalem to the depths of their being, troubling them to the core as they demand to know, who is this? So where are you in the story? Jesus has made his choice, a defining decision to follow God's call on his life. What will your decision be? What will define the course of your life? Maybe you're caught up in the wonderful extravaganza of the parade, not really knowing what's going on, but certainly wanting to be in on the excitement, not wanting to miss the party, whatever it's all about. Are you one of the disciples who's followed Jesus for a while now and finally thinks Jesus is going to be recognized, rising to power, and taking you along with him on his coattails? Could you be following along, perhaps reluctantly, with some inkling of what may be about to happen, not sure you want to continue this journey? Are you standing by the roadside with no thought of getting involved because you either are too discouraged to either notice or too afraid to risk something new? Or perhaps you're just too worn down and tired to even care. Or maybe you're not even here as Jesus comes riding in. Instead, you're on the other side of town as the crowds press in, taking over Jerusalem, marching in the ranks of the Roman soldiers, moving in with them to protect the status quo, holding the powers that be in place, however oppressive these powers may be. You see, your place in the story could define the rest of your journey. For Jesus, there is clarity about his direction and decision, intent on his ministry and mission, focused on the divine call on his life, moving with purpose. Jesus rides on into Jerusalem. And when he gets there, he continues doing what he's been doing all along, even though each act more surely seals his fate. Jesus heads for the temple, where he stirs things up even more. He drives out all who are selling and buying in the temple. He overturns the tables of the money changers and the chairs of the people selling the turtle doves, declaring, "You have made God's house a den of thieves." But you see, the thing is, all of this money changing and buying, selling activity in the temple is legitimate and necessary work, providing the people with what they need for the required sacrifices, giving them the tools for their necessary religious obligations. So Jesus is really challenging yet again the authority and power of the religious establishment, the religious leaders, the religious status quo, the usual way of doing things. By calling the temple a den of thieves, Jesus' judgment against the temple identifies it as a place where people experience extortion and abuse. And this is a judgment that strikes at the heart of Jewish power, pointing out the oppressiveness of this system and enraging the priests. In and of itself, in this context, this action on Jesus' part is enough to provide the basis for crucifying him. But undeterred, after this temple incident, Jesus heals the blind and the lame right there in the temple, again a taboo, again openly opposing the priestly authority for deciding who is in and who is out, redefining which people are within the bounds of God's care and who remains on the outside. Yet another act enraging the establishment. And then Jesus moves on, as recorded in Matthew's Gospel, to play out his last week on this earth, continuing his ministry much as before, very publicly, challenging those who oppose him, especially in the religious establishment, while he calls them to account even more forcefully than ever before.